Chapter 201, Surrender. Fatty Sue's simple and honest appearance gave Zhang Yi a strange sense of familiarity. There had been people like him in his past. He was not good at socializing and grew up in a relatively ordinary environment, so he had developed a somewhat inferior personality. As he grew up, his poor communication skills prevented him from making many friends. So when someone was a little nice to him, he would open his heart to them. As a result, after being deceived by his so-called friends, he began to doubt reality and immersed himself in the world of anime. This trait was extremely obvious in Fatty Sue. In particular, his excessive empathy allowed him to see things from the perspective of Zhang Yi, who had killed hundreds of people in Sudong village. Seeing Fatty Sue like this, Zhang Yi's desire to kill him was greatly reduced. However, he was not completely reassured, so he deliberately said, "You're quite generous. I'm sure some of the people I killed were your relatives, right? Don't you want to avenge them?" Zhang Yi stared intently at Fatty Sue's face. As long as there was any unusual expression on his face, he would strike first and cripple him. However, the sudden change of expression he was waiting for did not appear. Fatty Sue just lowered his eyelids and said with a slight sadness, "My parents died shortly after the snowstorm. My father had a heart attack on the first day of the sudden drop in temperature. The snow was so heavy that we couldn't take him to the hospital or find an ambulance, so he died at home. My mother was in poor health and also died in bed a week later." A hint of apology appeared on Fatty Sue's face. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to tell you these things. After all, these things aren't happy memories, and I'm sorry if they've affected your mood." He smiled innocently, looking a little embarrassed. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment, then asked, "What about the rest of your family? Aren't all the people in Sioux village part of the same clan?" "The same clan? Well, I guess so." Fatty Sue looked a little confused, as if he thought there was nothing wrong with that statement, but he also seemed a little puzzled. "Although we are from the same clan, no one in my family has ever looked up to me. In their eyes, I'm probably just a useless piece of trash who only knows how to play computer games at home." Fatty Sue scratched his head and smiled. "Look, they treat me like this, how much affection can I have for them? That's why I don't hate you for killing the people of Sioux village. On the contrary, I admire you. You were so cool when you were chasing us in your car with a sniper rifle." When Fatty Sue said this, his eyes sparkled as he looked at Zhang Yi. He dreamed of being such a handsome hero. He wanted everyone in the village to admire him and no longer treat him like a fat, useless nerd. Zhang Yi stared at Fatty Sue for a long time. Fatty Sue was also very nervous. From beginning to end, he didn't know much about Zhang Yi's abilities, only guessing that they had something to do with space. But one thing was certain, Zhang Yi's supernatural powers completely overpowered him. So with the two of them at their current distance, if they really fought, he wouldn't stand a chance. After a full minute, Zhang Yi slowly said, "Okay, since you came over to ask for peace, I'll give you a chance. I have no interest in your village, and those muggles can't affect me much. But you're an interesting person, so for your sake, I'll let Sudong village off the hook." Zhang Yi knew very well how to deal with people like Fatty Sue. He was timid and cowardly, sensitive inside, and as long as you gave him some affirmation, he would pour his heart out to you. Therefore, he needed to be treated with gentleness, rather than harsh threats. Sure enough, as soon as Fatty Sue heard this, he became excited inside. Spare them for his sake? Didn't that mean he had been recognized by Zhang Yi? Even someone as powerful as Zhang Yi recognized him, which was a great honor for him. "Thank you," Fatty Sue said with emotion. "Don't get too excited. I have other demands." Zhang Yi continued, "From now on, I need you to obey my orders. You must not resist any of my requests." With his powerful supernatural abilities, Zhang Yi still really wanted to have him as a subordinate. Since killing him and the people of Sudong village would not directly benefit Zhang Yi, he might as well do Fatty Sue a favor and take him under his wing. Fatty Sue hesitated slightly when he heard this request. Any request? This vague concept clearly made him a little worried. What if Zhang Yi set his sights on him one day? Zhang Yi also saw where his worries lay and curled his lips. I won't send you to your death. He wanted to keep Fatty Sue around so that he could be a useful helper when they encountered difficult enemies in the future. Seeing Fatty Sue's hesitation, Zhang Yi thought for a moment and took out his trump card. You fat geek, you should be powerless against this. Zhang Yi reached out, took something out of the huge warehouse in the dimensional space, and handed it over. Follow me, and I promise I won't treat you badly. Fatty Sue looked up and saw it, and his eyes immediately lit up. He was so excited that his fat body trembled. Rei Ayanami. What Zhang Yi took out was an unopened Rei Ayanami figurine. It was a limited edition from 2024, with only 50 copies sold worldwide. The price on the internet had been inflated to 25,000 yuan, and it was impossible to buy even if you had the money. For someone like Fatty Sue, who had lived in an old house for so long, this was the treasure he desired most. Fatty Sue looked at Zhang Yi in disbelief, then pointed at himself. This is for me? Zhang Yi nodded. I have a lot more like this. And there are some rare and interesting things that have been passed down for generations. As long as you follow me in the future, I guarantee you'll have all the figurines, pillows, game cartridges, and other things you want. You have to treat people according to their status. For example, with Fatty Sue, giving him something else might not work, but this thing would definitely make him fall head over heels. Fatty Sue let out a cry and pounced on it, hugging the precious Rei Ayanami figurine to his chest and staring at it intently. Zhang Yi, so you're also otaku? Then, do you like AI-chan? Fatty Sue looked at Zhang Yi expectantly. Zhang Yi was silent for a moment, then slowly shook his head. I'm not a kid anymore. Fatty Sue's face froze, and he lowered his head in disappointment. That's true. Zhang Yi smiled disdainfully. Only a beginner otaku like you would like her. In my heart, Renan Ace is the only one. The light that had dimmed in Fatty Sue's eyes lit up again. It was the feeling of finding somewhere you belong. Chapter 202, The Best Support Member. Just like that, Zhang Yi and Su Chunlei, the chubby individual, unexpectedly became partners. Zhang Yi had a natural affinity for Fatty Sue because this harmless little chubby individual seemed easy to deal with at first glance. Getting along with someone who is straightforward always gives one a sense of security, like raising a kitten or puppy. Of course, the main reason Zhang Yi took him as his little brother was because he valued his ice-based supernatural abilities. In the future, when he grew up, he would definitely become a good helper under Zhang Yi. As for Fatty Sue, as an adult male who liked 2D characters but was not understood by those around him, it had always been a pain in his heart. He never expected to meet someone like Zhang Yi who shared the same interests, so he immediately became very friendly towards him. Zhang Yi, let's add each other on WeChat. Then we can discuss 2D content often. He came over with a smirk. I have 100 terabytes of good resources. Many of them are limited edition books bought from Neon, which can't be found in Washu. Zhang Yi's expression twisted a little. Actually, I have a girlfriend. Fatty Sue's face suddenly froze, then he said resentfully, 3-dimensional women. They're so boring. Zhang Yi said ruthlessly, actually, it's just because no women in the 3rd dimension like you, that's why you're saying that, right? Fatty Sue's face turned pale in an instant, and he took a few steps back, looking at Zhang Yi with a terrified expression. You? How did you guess that? Why did you say that? Besides, it's not like no one likes me. Right now there's a pretty girl madly pursuing me, and I'm just considering whether to accept her or not. Fatty Sue looked stubborn. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. Oh, really? He didn't believe him at all. But since you're here, do me a favor. A good idea suddenly popped into his head. Fatty Sue blinked. What kind of favor? Come with me and you'll understand. Zhang Yi took out the snowmobile. This ability to take something out of thin air made Fatty Sue envious, and he admired Zhang Yi even more. Time is not important, space is king. Brother Zhang, your ability is unique even in the whole world. Zhang Yi opened the door and got in, asking with a hint of curiosity, where did you get all these theories? They're so systematic. Fatty Sue chuckled, research in our two-dimensional circle. Hee hee. Zhang Yi sneered dismissively. Time is not the master, space is the king. Zhang Yi suddenly thought of something about himself. He had returned to the end of the world when he was on the verge of death, which was a kind of time travel. Could it be that I still have supernatural abilities that haven't been developed yet? Zhang Yi had always had doubts about this. The reason he was able to be reborn, that is, to reverse time and space, might be related to his awakened supernatural abilities. But until now, he had not discovered any signs of such abilities. Never mind that. My supernatural abilities are still in their infancy. Perhaps with more practice and mastery, I will discover higher levels of abilities. Fatty Sue excitedly sat in the passenger seat, fastened his seatbelt, and looked around curiously. I haven't been in a car in a long time. The last time was 2 years ago when I went to the hospital to see my dad. Zhang Yi glanced at him and said, "What, you don't usually go out?" Fatty Sue said dismissively, "If it weren't for my mom forcing me to go downstairs and get some exercise every day, I wouldn't even bother leaving the house." Zhang Yi nodded and said, "Oh, so it's your mom." Fatty Sue nodded in agreement, "Yeah, it's my mom." As the two chatted, Fatty Sue gradually realized that something was wrong with the conversation. Huh? Why did it feel like he was being scolded? Zhang Yi held back his laughter and started the car, driving away. "Brother Zhang, where are we going?" "I'm taking you to find something good." Zhang Yi was going to a large gas station 10 kilometers away. The shelter consumed too much energy, and with his current reserves, it could only last for about 5 years. Out of caution, Zhang Yi planned to stockpile some more. However, if he did it himself, he would only be able to use an excavator, which would be a waste of time. That's why he hadn't been in a hurry to do it. Now that he had Fatty Sue, a support member with snow and ice abilities, his first thought was to use his abilities to dig up supplies under the snow. The two stopped in the middle of a white expanse of snow. Zhang Yi looked at the buildings around them to confirm their location, then said to Fatty Sue, "Help me clear the snow from this area." Fatty Sue didn't know what Zhang Yi wanted to do, but now that he had decided to follow Zhang Yi as his big brother, he naturally did as he was told. He walked up to Zhang Yi, stretched out his hands toward the snow, and then his eyes flashed with an ice blue light. Zhang Yi felt a familiar force surge from his body. It felt just like when he used his precision shot skill. Soon, the snow in front of them began to shake violently. The snow that had fallen over the past few days had compacted into a thick layer that was as hard as ice. Now it shattered, making a dull sound. Puff! Puff! Crack! Cracks appeared on the snow, dense like a spider web. Then, large chunks of broken ice floated up into the air and were thrown to both sides. Zhang Yi had been watching Fatty Sue from the side. Although Fatty Sue had now surrendered and become his subordinate, Zhang Yi still had to figure out his skills. As the saying goes, one must always be on guard against others. Fatty Sue's expression was relaxed at first, but as the pile of snow grew larger and larger, he slowly began to struggle. 5 minutes later, he cleared a large pit more than 10 meters wide in front of him, revealing the gas station buried deep within. Phew! Fatty Sue withdrew his ability, suddenly knelt on the ground, and gasped for breath. "Brother Zhang, do you think this is okay?" Fatty Sue asked Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi nodded, appearing calm on the surface, but in reality, he was ecstatic. With Fatty Sue as his top support member, it would be a piece of cake for him to obtain resources in the future. He took out 2 chocolate bars and handed them to Fatty Sue. "Eat something to replenish your energy." Fatty Sue's eyes lit up when he saw the chocolate bars. They were his favorite, but he hadn't eaten them in a long time. "Thanks, Brother Zhang." Fatty Sue took the chocolate bars, tore open the packaging, and stuffed them into his mouth. The rich aroma of cocoa butter melted in his mouth, and he was so happy he wanted to cry. Zhang Yi slid down the edge of the pit and collected all the oil stored in the gas station's underground oil tank. Chapter 203, You're a Genius. With this, Zhang had secured several years' worth of fuel. He climbed out of the snow pit, and Fatty Sue saw him and immediately asked, "Is it done?" Zhang nodded, "Not bad." This sentence meant that the fuel collection went smoothly, and at the same time, it was also a compliment to Fatty Sue. Without his help, this task would not have been so easy. Fatty Sue was immediately delighted and clapped his hands, saying, "That's great. Brother Zhang, you're so amazing." Fatty Sue's sincere praise made Zhang Yi feel a little embarrassed. In fact, for Zhang Yi, it was nothing more than using dimensional space to directly collect the fuel tanks. The main work was still done by Fatty Sue. However, Fatty Sue didn't think so. He thought that clearing the snow was easy and could be done by hand. But with such a large amount of oil, it was impossible to transport it by hand alone. Zhang Yi asked, "Didn't you think of digging up the supplies before?" Fatty Sue sighed helplessly when he heard this. "How could we not have thought of that? But it's freezing cold, and we can't go too far from the village. Even if we had sled dogs, the sled dogs here aren't the kind that live in cold environments like those in the north. If they're out for too long, their bodies won't be able to handle it. So we just dig around Shujia town for supermarkets, grain stores, and the like. But that's enough for us, so there's no need to go any further." Zhang Yi smiled as he looked at Fatty Sue. The more he looked at this guy, the more he liked him. This was a top-level support member. "That's not a problem for me. Just follow me and work hard, and I won't treat you unfairly." A sly look flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes as he deliberately said, "I can give you 1 can of the diesel and gasoline I got this time." At first, Fatty Sue was quite happy to hear this. But after thinking about it carefully, he suddenly looked miserable. "Brother Zhang, I appreciate your kindness. But even if you give me a can of gasoline, I don't have the ability to transport it back." Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. "Oh, I see. That's a pity. I, Zhang Yi, am not the kind of person who would treat my brothers badly, but there's really no other way. How about this, I'll compensate you with something else." After saying that, Zhang Yi took out a hiking backpack from his dimensional space. Yes, it was the one he had given to Su Hao earlier. It was filled to the brim with food. He handed the hiking backpack to Fatty Sue. "There's some food in here. Consider it a reward for you." Fatty Sue's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly took the hiking backpack. It was so heavy that he almost couldn't hold it. Fatty Sue opened the zipper and took a look. Wow, he was overjoyed. Inside were all kinds of goodies, including food from big brands, mostly high-calorie foods such as chocolate, chicken legs, and cream bread. Unlike the supermarket in his village, which mostly sold products from small workshops, these were in a completely different league. "Brother Zhang." Fatty Sue's eyes moistened. It was the first time someone had been so kind to him since his parents passed away. "Isn't this too much?" Fatty Sue was a little embarrassed. He felt that he hadn't helped much. He had only cleared the snow, while Zhang Yi had done most of the work. "This is how I treat the people around me. As long as you follow me and work hard, I guarantee you'll have good food and clothing and never have to worry about anything." Zhang Yi patted Fatty Sue on the shoulder and said with a smile. The light in Fatty Sue's eyes became determined. In his heart, he already regarded Zhang Yi as his benefactor, someone who understood his value. "Yes, Brother Zhang, I'll definitely follow you and work hard." Zhang Yi thought to himself, this Fatty is really easy to please. After getting the supplies he needed, Zhang Yi drove Fatty Sue back. On the way, he casually asked Fatty Sue how he had awakened his supernatural abilities. But when he mentioned this, Fatty Sue's face suddenly turned pig liver color, as if it were something difficult to talk about. Zhang Yi frowned slightly, feeling that something was strange. But he needed a large number of samples from mutants, so he continued to ask questions. Fatty Sue had no choice but to tell him the truth. "After my mother left, I didn't want to live anymore. But I didn't dare to kill myself, so I just lay in bed, hoping to starve myself to death. This wish was easy to fulfill. After all, our family had run out of food at that time." Zhang Yi asked, "So you say you woke up when you were about to starve to death?" "Ah, that's not it. Fatty Sue turned his head away and scratched his fat face embarrassedly. It was still warm under the covers. Since I hadn't starved to death yet, I thought I might as well enjoy myself one last time before I died. In the past, my parents always warned me that rewarding myself too much would damage my health and shorten my life. But I didn't want to live anymore, so I didn't care about that. So I rewarded myself a little more. Jean Yi's eyelids twitched violently. He seemed to understand how Fatty Sue had awakened his supernatural powers. You! How many times? Fatty Sue almost buried his head in his pants. I can't remember, maybe 20 times or so. I lost all feeling. Then, after I lost consciousness, I inexplicably felt a change in my body. That feeling was very refreshing and wonderful. Jean Yi fell silent. Damn, there are actually people who awaken supernatural powers when they are about to die. No one would believe it if he told them. He could only say that everyone has their own destiny. Jean Yi drove Fatty Sue to the riverbank. Fatty Sue looked at the Heron River, which was several hundred meters away, and asked weakly, "Brother Jean, can you take me to the other side?" With his body, he couldn't even run a few hundred meters. Jean Yi smiled deeply and said, "My car slips easily on ice." Last time, his car broke down on the river, so Jean Yi was extra cautious. That was Fatty Sue's home turf, so he still needed to be vigilant. Fatty Sue asked curiously, "Isn't your car a snowmobile?" "Yes, but a snowmobile isn't an icebreaker. It can only drive on snow, not ice." Fatty Sue thought Jean Yi's explanation made sense, but last night, he had clearly driven very skillfully when he was driving the sniper. However, Fatty Sue didn't question it and obediently unbuckled his seatbelt and prepared to get out of the car. Before leaving, Jean Yi said to him, "Chun Lei, be careful about one thing." Fatty Sue felt very close to Jean Yi when he heard him call his name. "Brother Jean, what is it?" Jean Yi said with a serious look on his face, "The end of the world is dangerous. Your Shujia town is a famous grain and vegetable town in Tianhai City. In the future, there may be people who come to rob your food in the future, you have to be careful." Fatty Sue swallowed hard and couldn't help but feel nervous. "Yes, Brother Jean, I'll remember." Chapter 204, Is It Possible? Fatty Sue walked step by step along the ice of the Heron River back to the shore. Jean Yi also drove back to Yunk Manor. He had a deeper purpose for saying those words to Fatty Sue. To warn the people of Shujia Town? He wasn't that kind. Those people had attacked him twice, and even if they were wiped out one day, Jean Yi wouldn't feel sorry for them. However, Jean Yi knew that in the future, other organizations and groups would likely come to attack Yunk Manor. Shujia Town was his neighbor and a natural barrier. After Jean Yi instilled this idea in Fatty Sue, anyone who appeared in the vicinity would be treated as a potential enemy. In that case, Shujia Town could help Jean Yi share some of the hatred. It's good to have a support member like this. Jean Yi looked at the clumsy figure on the ice and muttered to himself. However, he also had to be vigilant. The reason why Fatty Sue came to him and recognized him as his big brother was because of the formidable strength he had displayed. If he wasn't strong enough, he would have been killed by the people of Sudong village last night. Therefore, in the future, Jean Yi must train tirelessly to become even stronger. Jean Yi turned and left, feeling that the situation behind him was basically stable. However, there was one thing that he hadn't thought of. That was that Su Chun Lei, who represented Sudong village and was the strongest fighter in the entire Shujia town, was not actually the most powerful person in the village. From Jean Yi's point of view, this was inconceivable, but it was indeed the truth. Therefore, after Fatty Sue returned to the village, he excitedly ran to report the good news to the current clan chief, Sudong Tang. He thought that since he and Jean Yi had reached a reconciliation, the village would be safe from now on and they wouldn't have to worry about Jean Yi's revenge. However, after listening to his report, Sudong Tang's expression became unpredictable. After a long silence, he coldly said to Fatty Sue, "Who told you to act on your own initiative?" Fatty Sue had thought he would be praised, but Sudong Tang's reaction clearly poured cold water on him. He was a little confused. Sixth grandfather, but I saved our village from being attacked. You saw Zhang Yi's strength, we're no match for him. Su Dongtang sneered, you still have the nerve to say that? If you hadn't chickened out and refused to show up yesterday, would so many people from the Su family have died? Fatty Su's face suddenly turned pale, and he stammered, not knowing how to refute it. Su Dongtang continued, if it weren't for you, would your third grandfather be dead? Now you ran over there on your own to talk about reconciliation with them, and you think you've done something great. You've got some nerve. Fatty Su felt his face burning with shame, and he felt incredibly disappointed. But I promised my third grandfather that I would protect the village. We can't afford to have any more conflicts with Zhang Yi. Reconciliation is clearly the best option. Shut up. Su Dongtang suddenly interrupted Fatty Su with a sharp rebuke. He stared at Fatty Su with authority, and Fatty Su didn't dare to look him in the eye because of his long-standing seniority. That's just being self-righteous and acting smart. I am now the head of the Su family, and you must ask me before taking any action. You are not allowed to act on your own initiative. Fatty Su lowered his head and remained silent, feeling very wronged. He thought he was clearly a hero. Just at that moment, Su Dongtang suddenly softened his tone, walked over, and gently patted Fatty Su on the shoulder. Chun Lei, your sixth grandfather knows you mean well, but you are still young and immature in your thinking. Because of you, the Su family has suffered heavy losses. It was I who protected you in front of the clan, so they didn't expel you from the village. Su Dongtang sighed, from now on, you will stay in the village to atone for your sins. Don't do anything stupid again. Just obey the orders of the village. Do you understand? Fatty Su lowered his head and didn't say anything. Su Dongtang emphasized, do you understand? Fatty Su's legs instinctively trembled a little, and he nodded helplessly. I understand. Only then did Su Dongtang show a look of satisfaction. You can go back now. Remember, don't act on your own again. Fatty Su let out an "oh" and left Su Dongtang's house with a disappointed look on his face. Watching Fatty Su walk away, Su Dongtang adjusted his glasses and muttered, young people are arrogant and domineering. Don't think that just because you have a little skill, you can disregard your elders. Then, he took his cell phone out of his pocket and sent a message to the leaders of the various branches in the village. You don't need to worry about Zhang Yi anymore. I've already contacted him, and he has agreed to reconcile with us. He won't threaten our safety in the future. The leaders of the various branches were originally worried that Zhang Yi would attack them. Upon hearing Su Dongtang's words, they were instantly relieved and praised Su Dongtang for his ability. It's all thanks to you, sixth elder. You took care of that bastard in one fell swoop. We should have made you the clan chief. Third elder is old and confused, so he made such a mistake. The dead are gone, so let's not talk about it anymore. It's a good thing that our village will be led by the sixth elder in the future. After Zhang Yi returned home, he told Zhou Qir and Yang Xia about Fatty Su and Sudong village. This was also to prevent them from worrying. Yang Xia patted her ample chest and said, that's great. Zhou Qir looked at her with a mocking gaze, really? You're scared by just that? Yang Xia said angrily, no, I'm not. I just don't want to see such a bloody scene again. If the fighting continued, Zhang Yi would wipe out the entire Sudong village, which had thousands of people. Zhang Yi was definitely capable of doing something like that. Zhou Qir sneered maliciously, that's true, someone was vomiting their guts out yesterday. Yang Xia blushed when she was reminded of her embarrassing moment. Zhou Qir. Zhou Qir smugly wrapped her arm around Zhang Yi's arm and said, darling, you're so awesome. Zhang Yi said dismissively, those villagers are just a bunch of nobodies. They're no threat to me. But in the future, if some underground forces appear, that would be the worst. Yang Xia smiled and comforted him, you always like to think the worst. It's rare that we've solved the current problem, so let's just celebrate. Zhang Yi thought to himself, if you don't think far ahead, you'll have immediate worries. I don't want to think too far ahead, or it might turn into a big problem in the future. But since everyone was in a good mood, he didn't say anything. Zhou Qi walked to the bar, picked out 2 bottles of red wine from the Burgundy region, and smiled. "Since we're celebrating, let's have a drink together tonight." A sly look flashed in Yang Xia's eyes. "Okay, I'll go fry up 2 of my specialties." As a famous socialite in the entertainment industry, she could hold her liquor very well. Today, she planned to teach Zhang Yi and Zhou Qi a lesson. Zhang Yi smiled and said, "Just a little bit is enough. I can't hold my liquor very well." When Zhou Qi and Yang Xia heard this, they laughed even harder. "It's a rare happy day. Let's just drink a little." So, the 3 of them got together and drank until they were drunk. It was late at night, and Zhou Qi was the first to pass out. Yang Xia held up half a bottle of red wine more than her, but she couldn't hold her liquor either. Only Zhang Yi, who claimed he couldn't drink, was still sitting at the table, his eyes bright and alert, showing no signs of drunkenness. Looking at the 2 drunkards trying to get him drunk, Zhang Yi smiled slightly. "I forgot to tell you, I used to be a liquor salesman." But at this sight, his throat couldn't help but move twice. The 2 women were wearing thin nightgowns, and now that they were drunk, they were lying on the sofa, subconsciously hugging each other. At this moment, their clothes were in disarray. Yang Xia's strapless nightgown exposed most of her smooth, round shoulders, her breasts half exposed, her eyes seductive. Zhou Qi had one pink leg propped up on the back of the sofa and the other wedged between Yang Xia's legs. The posture was not elegant, but it had a kind of arrogant seductiveness. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows, thinking of Yang Xia's previous pleas to him, and couldn't help but smile wickedly. He walked over, reached out and flipped the switch, flattening the sofa. When unfolded, this leather sofa became a large bed, and a very spacious double bed at that. Looking at the 2 beautiful women in front of him, Zhang Yi reached out and lifted Yang Xia's skirt. Before long, Yang Xia, who was less drunk, woke up from her stupor. In her dream, she felt herself being hit by a force. When she woke up, she found that the feeling was even stronger. She opened her eyes and saw Zhou Qi lying in front of her, while she was lying on her side facing Zhou Qi. Behind her was. Yang Xia turned around in shock and saw Zhang Yi's handsome face. Her face instantly turned red with embarrassment, and she reached out and gently pushed his chest. "You can't do this. Kira's still here. It's okay, she's asleep. Don't make any noise. If you wake her up, how are you going to explain it to her?" Yang Xia quickly covered her mouth, afraid that she would make a sound and wake up her cousin who was only a few inches away. But the impact she felt behind her and the thrill of this secret affair made it difficult for her to pull away. Since then, Zhang Yi became even bolder and deliberately looked for Yang Xia during the day when she was at work. Sometimes it was in the bathroom, sometimes in the botanical garden, and sometimes in the kitchen. Yang Xia always felt ashamed towards Zhou Qi. But for some reason, the more she felt this way, the stronger her body's reaction became. It was painful, but also pleasurable. On the other hand, Zhang Yi's cell phone was constantly receiving messages from Fatty Su. "Brother Zhang, I'm pretty bored at home lately. Where are you going to take me out on a mission? Brother Zhang, I think we can form a superpower team. It would be best if there were 5 of us, each representing a color. For example, you can be the captain and be called Flaming Dragon, and I'll be Snow Wolf. Brother Zhang, why aren't you talking? If you don't like it, we can form a rainbow team. I'll be the King of Blue, and you can be the King of Colorless. How about it?" After meeting Zhang Yi, Fatty Su felt like he had found his kindred spirit. He didn't have many friends in the village, and after that battle, he was even more isolated by the villagers. Although they didn't dare to say anything on the surface, the distance in their eyes was even more piercing than the cold north wind. Fatty Su could only pin his hopes on Zhang Yi, desperate to get some comfort from him. In order to win people's hearts, Zhang Yi naturally had to chat with his little brother. He also took the opportunity to get some information from him. After a while, Fatty Su told Zhang Yi all about his supernatural abilities. However, Zhang Yi gradually found it difficult to keep up. Because he didn't have a girlfriend, the fat boy had too much energy. He would send Zhang Yi hundreds of messages a day, and even if Zhang Yi ignored him, he would still talk non-stop. "You fat bastard, do you have nothing better to do all day?" Zhang Yi asked through gritted teeth. There was a 2-second pause, then Fatty Sue's shocked voice came through. "Holy shit! Brother Zhang, you knew about this? Did you plan all this? You're amazing, I'm impressed." Zhang Yi, ... Zhang Yi covered his face, speechless at this fat man. He understood that people like Su Chunlei were unwelcome in society. So when he met someone who was slightly nicer to him, he wanted to pour his heart out. Even though Zhang Yi was being nice to him for a reason, he always thought the best of him. Zhang Yi also felt a little reluctant to scold this fat otaku. He had no choice but to open ChatGPT and let the AI software help him reply to Fatty Sue. Anyway, as long as he sent a dozen messages and replied with "Oh, and I see," he would be satisfied. Huh? Why do I feel like a jerk? Zhang Yi shook his head and dismissed the thought from his mind. Time passed peacefully for several days. Yang Xia had cultivated the botanical garden into something respectable, and she had even revived many of the dead flowers and plants. In the farmland, she planted some vegetables with the seeds Zhang Yi had given her. In particular, she planted green onions and chili peppers. These vegetables still tasted better when they were freshly picked from the ground. Zhang Yi also inspected the entire shelter inside and out, eliminating many safety hazards. However, one problem still lingered in Zhang Yi's mind. That was the security of the internet. He looked at the huge supercomputer in the control room and frowned slightly. This computer could control the entire shelter and provided him with many conveniences. It could be said that without it, the entire shelter would be paralyzed in an instant. If the shelter's network was hacked one day, the consequences would be terrifying. How can I solve this problem? Zhang Yi fell into deep thought. Zhang Yi couldn't help but think of Lu Fengda, who had easily found his personal information online. Even that deadbeat Fatty Sue was able to find his phone number. Network security was a big problem, and he had to find a way to plug this hole. Otherwise, if he encountered a top computer expert one day, it was possible that the shelter would be destroyed without a fight. Chapter 205, Yang Xia's Secret. That night. It was already late. Yang Xia quietly made her way to the living room in the dark, then tiptoed upstairs. She glanced at Zhang Yi's room, a complex look flashing in her eyes. Then she changed direction and came to Zhou Keir's door, knocking gently. "Hey!" The door slowly opened, revealing Zhou Keir's pretty face. Seeing Yang Xia, she whispered, "Come in." Yang Xia quietly entered the room. Zhou Keir carefully looked in the direction of Zhang Yi's room, then slowly closed the door. Yang Xia took out her cell phone and handed it to Zhou Keir. Zhou Keir sat on the bed and glanced at the message on her cell phone, her eyebrows immediately furrowing. This. Her expression was very complicated, a mixture of conflict and reluctance, not knowing what to do. Yang Xia walked up to her and begged softly, "Keir, you have to help me with this. You've been with Zhang Yi for so long, you can definitely talk to him better than I can." Zhou Keir looked very hesitant. She placed her white palm on her full chest and said helplessly, "I understand how you feel. But I know Zhang Yi too well. He wouldn't do something like that." Yang Xia was a little anxious, "But we can't just stand by and watch her die, can we? She's your cousin too." Zhou Keir bit her lip, a hint of pain in her eyes. "But we don't know what's going on over there right now. Zhang Yi is an overly cautious man, which is why he has been able to keep us alive. He won't help us." Yang Xia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "If we don't try our best, how will we know it won't work?" When she opened her eyes, her gaze flashed with determination. "We have to try no matter what." Seeing her expression, Zhou Keir asked curiously, "What are you going to do?" Yang Xia placed her right hand on her neck, then moved it down her fair neck, past the high peaks and winding paths, all the way to a deep, hidden place. A woman's best weapon is her own body. Zhou Keir suddenly said with some caution, to put it bluntly, you just want to seduce him, right? Yang Xia blushed. No, I'm doing this for Xin. Zhou Qiu snorted. Don't think I don't know what you two are up to. Yang Xia's eyes darted around, then she said, just tell me if you'll help me with this or not. Zhou Qiu frowned slightly. Help you? She was a very smart woman, and after a moment's thought, she immediately realized what Yang Xia meant. In an instant, her face turned red all the way down to her neck. I would never do such a thing. How shameful. She wasn't used to being with more than two people. Just as the two women were discussing how to seduce Zhang Yi, knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Zhou Qiu and Yang Xia were startled. At this time, the only person who could knock on the door was Zhang Yi. Yang Xia's heart tightened. She hadn't discussed it with Zhou Qiu yet, and Zhang Yi was already here. How could she explain this? Zhou Qiu hurried over to open the door. Outside the door, Zhang Yi was standing there in a black pajama, looking at her and Yang Xia sitting on the bed with an amused look on his face. He had noticed them when Yang Xia went upstairs. Perhaps it was his usual caution, or perhaps it was the insight that came with his space ability, but Zhang Yi was very sensitive to the sounds around him. He was curious as to what these two women were talking about that they couldn't talk about during the day and had to wait until midnight when he was asleep to secretly plot together. At this moment, Zhou Qiu and Yang Xia were also wearing pajamas. Zhou Qiu was wearing pink, and Yang Xia was wearing purple, both of which were very sexy designs. After all, Zhang Yi had personally picked them out for them. The most wonderful thing about these pajamas was that they covered up the parts that should be covered, but revealed the parts that shouldn't be covered. The highest level of charm is not exposure, but concealment. The white calves that were faintly visible under the pajamas, the glimpse of their soft breasts and snow-white feet, made it even easier to arouse people's desires. In the middle of the night, two beautiful women were quietly gathered together, wearing very simple clothes. After being discovered, Zhou Qiu's face was still flushed, and Yang Xia had a strange expression, as if she had been caught stealing something. It was inevitable that Zhang Yi would have second thoughts. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Are you two playing around like this?" He pinched Zhou Qiu's chin with one hand and looked at her confused eyes and said, "Actually, you don't have to hide it. I'm a pretty open person. Next time you have thoughts like this, you can do it in front of me. People are curious, after all. I've never seen how tofu is made." Zhang Yi laughed maliciously. At this point, even Zhou Qiu, who was very innocent, understood what Zhang Yi meant. "Oh my God, you're so bad. I'm not a lesbian." She punched Zhang Yi's chest with her little fist. "Oh, really? Then why are you two lying in bed in the middle of the night? Are you exchanging techniques?" Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xia on the bed with an amused expression. His joke carried a hint of suspicion. Yang Xia was a smart girl and immediately understood what Zhang Yi meant. "No, Zhang Yi. We're just talking about something that happened at home. Family matters." Zhang Yi paused when he heard those words. His parents had passed away a few years ago, and although he had some relatives in Tianhai City, they were only on good terms with Zhang Yi. As for his other relatives, they were all far away. Therefore, Zhang Yi lived alone and had no burdens. However, not everyone was like him. Zhang Yi hugged Zhou Qiu and entered the door, closing it behind him, then got into bed. The three of them sat on the bed in their pajamas and began their nighttime chat. "Tell me. I don't want there to be any secrets between the three of us." Zhang Yi smiled at the two of them. "Do you have relatives living far away who want to take you back to live with them?" After spending some time together, it was inevitable that feelings would develop. If they wanted to leave, Zhang Yi would definitely feel some reluctance. However, it was their freedom to leave, and Zhang Yi would not stop them. "It's not like that." Zhou Qiu shook her head, looking a little gloomy. "After the snowstorm, I lost contact with my family. Now I don't even know if they're alive or dead." Zhou Qiu was developing her career in Tianhai City alone, far away from her family, some of whom were even abroad. With the current state of communication, it was impossible to get in touch with them. Moreover, there was a high probability that they had died in the snowstorm. Zhang nodded and looked at Yang Xie. If Zhou Qi didn't have a problem, then she was the only option. Sure enough, when Yang Xie saw Zhang Yi looking at her, her expression changed slightly. Actually, my family did contact me.